Hi everyone, Flaming Footy here and welcome back to another YouTube video on the channel. And today guys, we are going to be continuing our AFL 2022 3-game match reviews. Here we are for another massive 3 games, the latest Saturday games, Saturday Twilight and the 2 Saturday Nighters. 3 massive games. Gold Coast vs Geelong, Melbourne vs Carlton and Fremantle vs West Coast are the games that we're going to be reviewing. Again, we learned a lot more about these teams and a lot more about the finals competitors because Geelong, Melbourne, Carlton, Fremantle, all teams that are in the mix for finals and top 4. So it's always more interesting when we're learning more about these teams. And anyway, let's go ahead, hop right into things. Gold Coast vs Geelong. So, Gold Coast vs Geelong was the 3rd game on Saturday, the Saturday afternoon, Saturday twilight time slot at Metricon Stadium. The Suns have hosted a fair few games in this time slot over this year and have performed pretty well, but this one was definitely an exception of that. Always playing the Cats up there was always going to be tough. The Cats have had a relatively easy run home and have looked like the best side. They've won 12 in a row now. They've been looking really well, better than Melbourne in my opinion. And better than Collingwood. They are the minor premiers for me, and after this win they will definitely sit there. They got percentage. And Gold Coast, their hunger wasn't there. Like, you should still be thinking, even though you can't make finals, you should still be competing, and they lost 9-5-59 to 18-11, 119. That's just an absolute smashing, But yeah, the fight wasn't even there. Like, they haven't made finals, but you should still try and fight. Even though they haven't made finals, still try and put together a decent end to show that you're still going to compete. But no, they were never in it. They were never in this game with the Suns at all. The Cats led, and at quarter time, you knew it was over. They extended their lead in the second quarter, and then in the third quarter, that was a 50-50 quarter. The Suns kicked the first 3, but even still then, there was no coming back. And then the Cats. And then the Cats just kept on going. It was just an absolute obliteration. One of the Suns would love to forget about. 36 disposal for Tuke Miller, 3 goals for Cameron, 133 fantasy for Miller, 9 tackles for Atkins. AFL fantasy, 133 for Miller, 130 for Ellis, 120 for Blitzarves, 114 for Guthrie, 110 for Cameron, 104 for Anderson and Parfitt, 102 for Witts. Goals and behinds, 3 for Cameron and Stengel, 2 for Rankin, Holmes, Parfitt, Blitzarves, and Myers. And with all this trade talk around Rankin, who was a Gold Coast only multiple goal scorer, Cho and Casbolt were kept quiet. But yeah, that could have been the last time that we have seen Isaac Rankin in Gold Coast jumper. There's been speculations that he could be moving to the Adelaide Crows or to another club of interest. There's plenty over Isaac Rankin, and no surprise, he's almost a bit of a Shai Bolt and Cozzy Pickett, or Shea Bolt and Cozzy Pickett kind of player. I think those 3 are pretty similar in what they can do, and Rankin showed his skills were definitely on display in this game, even though he was in the losing side. 36 disposals for Miller, always tries to Tuke Miller. 32 disposals for Brandon Ellis, 30 for Guthrie, 28 for Parfitt. Now to the marks, 9 for Ellis and Collar-Jasny, 8 for Ainsworth, Farrar, Miller and Cameron. Tackles, 9 for Rao and Atkins, 8 for Rosa, 6 for Selwood, 5 for Flanders. 41 hitouts for Witts, 13 for Stanley, 8 for Blitzarves, 4 for Hawkins, 1 for Day and Henry. And this side was a real loaded side because they had a few laid outs last week. They got them all back in this week and were absolutely firing. They went inside 30 more times than Gold Coast. That's just a smashing right there. 30 more times. Suns only went inside 42 times. Clearances were all locked. 38 clearances apiece, 14 centre clearances apiece, 24 stoppage clearances apiece. Uncontested possessions was in Geelong's favour. Now, what else have we got? The Cats took way more contested marks and way more marks inside 50. They led for majority of the game and were definitely deserving winners, the Cats. They will finish minor premiers this year. What a year it has been for them. And they do round 22 strongly before meeting with West Coast at Cardinia Park next week. Now to the first Saturday night game. Melbourne vs Carlton at the MCG. And this one was going to be massive. people thought it may not have been the most interesting game, which was definitely going to be me, but it actually turned out to be a ripper, but it was going to be a very important game regardless of the result. Carlton, they looked to have a finals berth they looked to make finals. That was going to be inked in with a few minutes to go, but Cozzy Pickett out of nowhere, as I just said, Cozzy Pickett, Rankin, Bolton, all kind of related with what they can do. They can just get the ball onto the boot and it goes through. Pickett exactly that. Melbourne 11-13-79 beat Carlton 10-14-74. Carlton fans have heartbreak in this one. They'd be very disappointed that they couldn't hold on to the ball. They did make a few mistakes, and they just couldn't time waste, which is a big problem there for Carlton. If they want to be able to win the game, they've got to be able to time waste, and they just couldn't do that. They couldn't hold on to the ball for long enough. And then it goes down Melbourne's end. They get a goal. Melbourne were in control for most of the game, but it is now easy to break through Melbourne's defensive 50. We saw it from last year compared to this year that more teams have been able to beat Melbourne this year. And that it's not as hard to do as what it was last year. Last year, nobody could beat them. This year, more teams have been able to find their feet and beat them. Melbourne are becoming playable. You can now play against them and you can actually work out how to beat them. And Carlton almost did this. They kept them very contested. Just 7 goals to half time, 2 to quarter time in a really low scoring game. In the third quarter, the scoring opened up, and again in the last. It was such a really exciting game. Carlton also wanted to play physical, which is what Adelaide did to them a couple of weeks ago when they lost by 29 points. So they did bring physicality, and it did work, and they just fell short of the win. Melbourne, I think they were the more classy of the sides as well. I think Carlton were a bit rushy and mistakey, so I do think Melbourne did deserve the win as well. Brayshaw 38 disposals, Melksham 4 goals. He's one that can go unnoticed as well. Didn't play in the Premiership last year, but could be a big piece of it this year. 123 fantasy for Brayshaw, 12 tackles for Paddy Cripps. I think with this performance, I think this does enough to say that Carlton will make the finals, but they do have a big run home coming up against Collingwood, which they have to win, or the other option is that they do have to lose, but by a small amount, and rely that the Dogs either lose to the Hawks altogether, or they only get a small win to the Dogs. I think that'll work for Carlton, even if they do lose 2 games. The Hawks-Dogs game is going to be massive. 123 fantasy for Brayshaw and Doherty, 118 for Cripps, 115 for Gawn, 109 for Oliver, 104 for Salem, 101 for May, 99 for Setterfield, 4 goals for Melksham, 3 for Martin, Mackay, 2 for Pickett, including the match winner, 1 goal, 4 for Curnow. He didn't really get to add to his impressive Coleman medal tally, having an inaccurate 9 from the sticks. 1 goal, 3 for Silvani, 1 goal, 2 for Brown. Those 3 players would have liked to have had more accurate nights in front of the sticks than what they ended up doing. 38 disposals for Brayshaw, 29 for Oliver, 28 for Doherty, 27 for Walsh. Now to the marks we go. 9 for Young, 8 for Salem, 7 for Gawn, Hibbert, Melksham and Mackay. Now to the tackles. 12 for Cripps, 10 for Doherty, 9 for Oliver, 8 for Fritsch, 7 for Silvani, 33 hit-outs for Gawn, 27 for Pitternet, 19 for Jackson, 6 for Silvani, 5 for Brown, 3 for Mackay. And Melbourne did go inside 50 10 more times than Carlton. As I just touched on before, they are the more classy of the sides in Melbourne. They are more, I think they're more cool under pressure as well. But both sides were it was a really scrappy game until the scoring opened up. Carlton won clearances. They did manage to match Melbourne's midfield around the clearances as well. What else? Melbourne took more marks inside 50, getting more set shots. I think whenever Carlton went in, I think it was more of a scrappy kind of thing when Carlton went in. But when Melbourne went in, they always found a way to get a mark. There was a 1-on-3 where, or 2-on-4, where Melksham managed to get the mark, which really should have been a Carlton ball. So, yeah, there was definitely, Melbourne were just more cool under pressure. I think they were definitely deserving winners. I think Carlton did give away their chance to win the game. They had a chance. But in the end, they just couldn't control what they did with the footy in the last couple of minutes. They give it back to the Demons, and the Demons end up winning a game, which I think they definitely did deserve to win. I think they were more classy, and as a result, pick up the W, the 4 points, and now have a big blockbuster clash coming up against Brisbane next week, while Carlton have a potential elimination final against Collingwood, which will probably sum up whether they'll make the top 8 or not. But very interesting game of footy this one was. Now over to Perth we go for the Western Derby, a wet Western Derby. David Mundy's last Western Derby number 55. Mundy's 31st Derby as well. Unbelievable stuff there. Fremantle back to their inaccurate worst. They had a pretty inaccurate game against Adelaide back in round 1. I haven't really seen a lot of inaccuracy since then. And of course last year that they lost games due to inaccuracy. And it was a wet, sloppy game, so no surprise that they ended up finishing with 9-17 on the scoreboard. 9 goals, 71 beats West Coast, 7-5-47. They've been struggling to score a lot this year, have West Coast, and showed that again yesterday, that they just couldn't get to score, but they were with Fremantle for a majority of the game. It was just that third quarter where the game started to break open. That's where things got going. But West Coast managed to compete with them in the first half, gave Fremantle something to think about in the second half. They came out, they played really well. They kicked 2 goals, 8, I think that is. Yeah, 2 goals, 8 to 1 goal, 1 in that third quarter. 2 goals, 8. Like, that really should have been a lot better. That was the quarter where they were inaccurate. They probably should have ended up going from here to about here, like right up on that 40-point margin at three-quarter time, but they were only up by not even 20 points because of their inaccuracy. But again, though, they still did a good job, and then in the last quarter, they just finished off the deal. And, yeah, Fremantle, much more classier, really good. And Sean Darcy did a lot of work with the 147 fantasy. Xavier O'Neill, 11 tackles, laid a couple of big tackles as well. 2 goals for Frederick, 30 disposals for Liam Duggan. Now the player stats, 147 fantasy for Darcy, 136 for Duggan, 115 for Hearn, 111 for O'Neill, 103 for Akers, 100 for Walters, 98 for Sarong. 2 goals for Frederick, Waterman and Walters. Everybody else with the 1 goal. Let's see, anybody have terrible nights? No, it was just a combination of everybody that ended up chipping in for the behinds. For Fremantle, 30 disposal for Duggan, 29 for Akers, 28 for Brodie. Will Brodie, absolute star. 28 for Hearn, 25 for Mundy in his final Western Derby, 25 for Sarong. Marks, 12 for Barras, talk about him. He is their rock-solid defender. Nobody else really gets... I mean, Shannon Hearn is another partner for him in the back line. But nobody else can really get going with their back line. It is tough, and that's why they've been able to leak some pretty big scores this year of West Coast against them, because there's not really much of a great defence. They're not really a stacked team, West Coast. They do have premiership players in there, but they're just not as good as what they once were. 12 for Brass, 10 for Duggan, 8 for Walters, 8 for Redden, 7 for Hoff, 6 for Hearn. Tackles, 11 for O'Neill, by far the best by anybody else on the ground. 7 for Sarong, 6 for Schultz, Darcy, Shuey, Darling, Cripps. Hit-outs now, 56 for Darcy. That is a massive number, 56. Smashing Natanui, who got 24. 6 for the utility swingman, Griffin Logue. 3 for Dixon. And 1 for Barras. Team stats now, where Fremantle went inside 50, 57 times to 44. Had more of the footy than West Coast. Smashed them in the hit-outs and clearances again. West Coast midfield just doesn't match the best midfields in the competition, and Fremantle made light work of them pretty much. Had more contested and uncontested footy, did Freo. West Coast took more marks, plus 20, and more contested marks, plus 2, but plus 3 marks inside 50 for the Dockers. Again, that wasn't really much of the marking sort of game, 7-4 marks inside 50. Fremantle led for most of the game, were deserving winners. Tackles, they were pretty high, 14-13 tackles inside 50. 7-2 bounces in the wet. We've seen games that have had less than this. You don't tend to take bounces in the wet, so I wonder how that would have ended up playing out. But pretty comfortable win for the Dockers. They win by 24 in David Mundy's final derby. Okay, so today's footy action, Richmond vs Hawthorn starts us up at the MCG. All Richmond have to do is win to seal a spot in the top 8. It's that easy for Richmond. All they got to do is win. They have Hawthorn Essendon to come, and even if they don't win this week, you'd be thinking they'll get one next week versus Essendon. So Richmond, they're in finals, I'd be saying. I don't see them losing both Hawthorn and Essendon. Now though, the big game today, Sydney versus Collingwood at the SCG. I think that looms to be a really big game. I think the winner will probably end up getting top 4. Loser probably won't. So I think that's going to be a massive game there. And then, of course, both these two sides have massive games next week. Collingwood play Carlton. Sydney plays St Kilda. So, again, not easy games for them next week. So somebody's going to have to capitalise on this opportunity to get the win here. And Essendon and Port Adelaide closed off the round at Marvel Stadium. Round 23 now. Here's a little look ahead at what we have got. This is for a top 4 spot on Friday night. Brisbane versus Melbourne for a top 4 spot right there. The winner gets it. The loser won't. Then the first game on Saturday, massive for the Giants massive for the Dockers top 4 hopes. They play the Giants. North Melbourne and Gold Coast do battle at Marvel Stadium. The Cats and Eagles go head-to-head at GMHBA in what will definitely put the Cats way clear on top of the table. The Bombers play Richmond on Saturday night. We should be thinking Richmond are already locked into finals, but they can again go up into 7th spot and make that their own. Port Adelaide play the Crows Saturday night showdown. Not going to mean anything to the finals, but still going to be an absolute ripping game anyway. Hawthorn versus the Western Bulldogs. This game, the Sunday is going to contribute to finals heaps. This one starts it off. The Dogs haven't been great as of lately. Utah Stadium could cause troubles for them, so their finals race could be over next week. We'll be able to find this out this time next week. Well, a few hours later. But yeah, and then the Blues do battle with the Pies in what is going to be probably the biggest game of next round, apart from Brisbane, Melbourne. And then the Saints and the Swans go battle in the final game of the year, which will probably see if Sydney will make the top 4 or not. Ladder now, on to how things are shaping up. Geelong clear top of the table. Melbourne are in 2nd. Brisbane are currently in 3rd, both on 60 points. Collingwood are in 4th, but still have a game in hand. Sydney, they are down into 6th now, but they can climb up as high as well. They can go into 2nd if they win against Collingwood, and if they pick up a little bit of percentage along the way as well. Fremantle, they are currently in 5th. That draw could do them good or it could do them harm. Going to be interesting to see how they go. Carlton are in 7th, not yet locked in, nor are Richmond, but you again think they'd be locked in, and then they can go into 50 points after today. And then the Doggies, they're still a chance. If you look at Carlton's percentage, they need to next week make sure that they lose, point something of that, like 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.3, 0.4, and then they have to make sure that Doggies aren't going to pick up any percentage, that they end up picking up, a couple of points. It's going to be really close, both these two teams. I think Carlton just have to win a game, though. I don't think they're going to be able to rely on percentage. That's just way too risky. I think they'll end up missing out if they don't get a win and if the Dogs win versus Hawthorn. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so then you guys will never miss another video on the channel. Thank you guys all so much for watching. So bye everyone. Flaming Footy out.